Hi everyone, this is Abstruse. Here I have Zion Send with me right here. Thank you so much for joining the live.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you for the invitation.
it all started with a slightly controversial. um, let's see. I think I have the video. Let's see. Let's see. I thought I did. Here you go. Let's use this. Oh, nope. I am unprepared because it's supposed to be a different format. But I actually it's supposed to be MP.
Hmm?
Um, I apologize for that. I was like, yes, I downloaded the clip. And it's like, it's not here.
Oh
Okay.
no.
Yeah, that's not a too bad of a deal. But I definitely I like your content. Typically. You had one in which one in particular caught my attention is where you made a swipe at W.E.B. Du Bois. Uh and I was like, "Oh, yes. This is the guy." You want to talk about that for a second? Well, it's a little bit off topic, but it's
Is
all right.
it is I'm thinking, was it the one where I don't think I made a swipe at WEB Du Bois. More or less I was talking about actually Booker T. Washington
Okay.
and his his thoughts on black liberation
Right.
and his thoughts that if we were educated enough that we would be able to show white people that we would be able to understand our freedom.
Right.
And I didn't agree with that. I don't think that's a sound solution
Absolutely.
to what we need to do as strugglers in
Right.
this. So, but I personally have no problem with W.E.B. Du Bois. I actually read Black Reconstruction,
Right.
um, Souls of Black Folk. Um, I did have some criticisms on some of his
Work.
earlier work
Right.
with the Talented Tenth and how it was basically implying eugenics.
Right.
However, one thing about him also is that he criticized that. He understood that that was not what was correct
Right.
for us.
Right.
And he went on his way to actually change his mindset towards the end of his life.
Right.
So that's one big thing that when I look at leaders, especially leaders for Black liberation, that they are keeping mindful
Right.
of everything that they do and how they want to change.
Right.
How would they change?
And the
So,
impact that it would have, you know, on
absolutely,
Black people as a whole. So
absolutely.
thank you so much for you showed a little bit of your views on that. We're gonna get on topic with the first topic, the impact of Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam on the Black community. How far back do you want to go with this? Because we could talk about Malcolm X. Um, you know, we can talk about the Million Man March. I mean, there's so many benchmarks, in my
I
opinion.
I can tell you that my I wouldn't say knowledge. of the Nation of Islam is vast, but me having the lived experience of having them in my neighborhood and having them active around, I do know that they are very prominent and they have a positive impact. Same time, they also have a lot of reactionary elements to them, especially when it comes to people with marginalized genders. They do have a bit of homophobia with them, and a lot of times they do take some of the criticisms that people might have against them and try to bring a revisionism to.
Right.
That's one thing. Um, we can talk about Malcolm to start off from where he started from joining the nation,
Right.
then to his pilgrimage, and for him to change his stance.
I wouldn't say he changed it 1,000%. I don't like the misperception that Malcolm was an integrationist at any point in his life.
Here it is. I wasn't going to say that because
Okay.
Malcolm was 100% not an integrationist.
Right.
He did not change his stance on that.
Right.
In fact, more of his stance was that he was broadening it to make sure every black person had a chance for liberation and
Okay. Right.
not just those who hated white people.
Absolutely. Right.
So so that is a big misconception that should be struggled against
Right.
with him, is that he didn't change his stance against what he believed in. It was more of he understood that there is much more to
Right.
what black liberation is, in my
Right.
opinion, in his opinion.
Right. Well, and I also saw it as he still wanted self determination, and he brought in his perspective to Pan Africanism as well. Um,
Yes.
uh, which was pivotal because his father was a Garveyite who was all about Pan Africanism. So it kind of was full circle, for him and his, Garveyite father and mother, for him to make that huge shift from localized NOI ideology to a globalized all
Mhm.
oppression of Africans everywhere. um, that perspective actually changed a lot of things. And so,
Yes.
you know I also I would like to talk about, I'm not going to jump ahead to blaming the Nation of Islam for certain assassinations.
Mhm.
I want to take our time with that. Okay, so um, if you realize anything about the Nation of Islam, is that it is highly, I want to say, dictatorship type of. I don't know if they have a council in which they vote. Most organizations do have a council of bishops or whatever type of hierarchy they have. Um, Even the ayatollahs have a council to answer
Mhm.
to. I don't feel like that's the case with the Nation of Islam, right? And
Right.
so, for a long time, Elijah Muhammad was the leader, and his mentor was Fard, um, and the ranks. Malcolm expanded the Nation of Islam nationally,
Right.
um, and so he was the face of the Nation of Islam, especially with the media. But
Mhm.
I felt like they did a lot of posturing, um, to pull the reins in on Malcolm, even though he was just publicly saying what he was being privately taught. Um,
Right. Right.
and so for me, Malcolm has a big legacy in the Black community. He is, a premier leftist as well. Um,
Hmm.
and he also, his ideology stands the test of time. His speeches on police brutality, his speeches on self-determination of melanated people, him warning about integration was not going to include us. uh, I would like to say that my opinion of integration is not what it is currently. We Black people, melanated people, have been kind of forced into a system that was never meant for us. And so we don't learn about our 2000 inventors who, brooms, vacuums, air conditioning, car components for the engine to function. We don't learn about that because it wasn't made for us to learn about that. And so I think Malcolm was skeptical about integration for that reason and that reason alone. Um, and yeah, so what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny you say that because I don't have the speeches, but I can say in a condensed way that a lot of times he talked about how we were we were creating these things and how it was made for others' consumption, as you said, and how it boiled down to exploitation, and how that we were still, in a way, still slaves to that. Um,
Absolutely.
the big thing about integration, he said, is that you just cannot trust
Right.
people to be in good faith. You stab me with a 9-inch knife.
Right.
You pull it out 6 inches. That's not progress.
Absolutely.
And I think yes, his his ideology still took it still stands to be true, to say that we are not getting we are not having the fair share of what
Right.
we are owed.
Right.
And I think also that is the reason why he was murdered,
Right.
because he took a he took a more he took a more radical stance beyond the buy black,
Right.
beyond the we have to make our own economics, beyond the we are a nation within a nation. We are not trying to we are not only trying to make a seat, we are trying to make a seat for all of us.
Right.
He had a vision beyond that I really do believe that the NOI was threatened by that.
Right. 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 Because he went global. And he was literally being flown out to talk to African leaders,
Hmm.
um, who wanted to see what Malcolm was all about. Um, and it's crazy to me because another thing that I see is a lot of times, right? Um, I think Farrakhan is mainly judged on the rhetoric he speaks to his crowd.
Hmm.
Um, and so, but notwithstanding his impact on the Black community, as far as hip hop, he's stopped a lot of beefs that
Hmm.
were potentially lethal. Um, uh, he's great at connecting with the youth, no matter how old he gets.
Yes.
And um, he speaks on Black issues. I feel that that hits in a way that a lot of other people can't hit, right? And so when I talk about he can connect with the intellectuals and he
Hmm.
can connect with the street dudes. Um, and when I see it from that perspective, um, I don't know too many people who get up as high as he does that's able to do that. Now, also, an association with Farrakhan comes with a lot of negative connotations because of his rhetoric, um, and which also impacts the Black community, right? So, a
Yes.
lot of people feel like because Farrakhan is so near and dear in our hearts, um, that we have the same exact views as Minister Farrakhan.
And see, uh, and this is a big hot take that I have when it comes to Farrakhan is that because of his rhetoric, a lot of time people often point to him to saying why black people are big anti-Semites and that it's all his fault
Right,
because he's at the forefront and a lot of people listen to him,
right,
which again is very incorrect. You know, at at the forefront of it all, you know, no matter our thoughts about him, whatever he has is very insignificant to the system that he is still exploited by.
right.
You know,
Absolutely.
and I think one of the biggest things that I have an issue about Farrakhan is that in a way that he was the antithesis of actually Martin Luther King, in my
Right,
opinion.
right,
And the the thing that makes them so different was that he took a more radical stance or more radical rhetoric to where people only have one perception of Martin Luther King as in him being an integrationist because of how he was spoon fed.
right,
And that is further from the truth. Martin Luther King, with all of his flaws, at the end of his life was an anti-capitalist. Was
absolutely.
working
He was a socialist.
was yes, he was working for workers' rights. His last speech, we are coming to get our check. But
Absolutely.
then, but a lot of times that gets erased. And that was the bigger point of my TikTok before people chimed in and thinking that it was something different. Um, a lot of times we see that Martin Luther King was this bad integrationist. He didn't help. He made more harm to the black community more than good. And
Right,
kind of like, well, wait a second. We have people that are looking up to living man of the ministry, and he also has caused a bit more harm to us. Now, again, I take nothing away from the Nation of Islam. They are great in our community. In our community, they teach us political education. They teach us self determination. We ought to learn these things. But at the same time, we are also learning a lot about how to also exploit one another
right,
because a lot of times these men and women, especially higher ups of the nation, are still living in these places that are destitute and still living and watching many of us falter. You know, they can only do but so much
right.
to that. and I give them that they're only human. But when we try to say that one person should have all the blame or one person should be taken down because of that, we're not seeing the full surface of a lot of things.
Right.
There's a lot of skeletons in the closet of the higher up,
Right.
and for that to be thrown under the rug like that, I just don't think that's fair. When it comes to people that we look up to, we should look at them at a critical standpoint. Whether or not you still support it from there, that's up to you.
Absolutely. And so when I look at it from a standpoint of looking at anti-capitalism, you are absolutely right. Dr. King was anti-capitalist. I had one question. What? How much did you miss? You missed 20 minutes. Um, we introduced each other, and Zion is a black comrade. Obviously, he's black, but he's a comrade, and his black leftist views are very much anti-capitalist, and he's very much critical of Booker T. Washington, and his stance on respectability politics. Is Am I correct on that?
That is
And
correct.
we discussed some of the impact of Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam on the Black community. We talked about so far hip hop, his impact on hip hop, his impact, ranges from intellectuals to the streets, which the Nation of Islam has always been really good at leveraging their influence, for sure. And the stigma attached to a lot of the rhetoric that they have in the Nation of Islam is slightly damaging to the black community, um, because we hold the Nation of Islam and Minister Farrakhan near and dear to our hearts in the black community, a lot of times, but sometimes the rhetoric doesn't always reflect how we feel as a people. um, we can even go forward and talk about the Million Man March. Where were you? I believe, what year was that? Was that in 1996? Um,
I was about 5 years old
okay.
at the first Million Man March,
Okay. And
and
do you remember every black man wanted to go to DC?
hmm I
Right.
do remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember that. My grandfather, may he rest, may he rest well. Actually had it on where we were saying it, and he was listening to that, and it was very impactful for him. To have that many people around to gather up to
Right.
have what I think it did for them as black men. It gave them a way of saying that we have a voice. We can unite around this.
Absolutely.
Now, I do also remember 2015, was it?
Yes.
Um, the the anniversary of the Man March
Right.
and what they did in DC again regarding to it. That was a big event. I
Right.
remember it very well. I remember tuning into it, and it had that same impact where people were united on that. But
Absolutely.
but at the same time, growing growing older to it and finally listening into it. I hate to say it. I hate to say it, and this isn't on the individuals, but a lot of times it wasn't applied to it. You know, A lot of times it was flowery, in my opinion. There was no like concrete. What what should we do? What are we going to do? A lot of it was hey, you know, you need to do this. You need to be this for your community. But like a lot of them didn't know how what direction do we take to do that. It was almost like a glorified Bible sermon in a way.
Well, okay, so the first Million Man March, I remember I recall you saying that that there's a lot of anti-homosexual sentiment in the Nation of Islam.
Hmm.
However, they did unite with um, Cleo Manago, and he is a Pan African, self proclaimed, same gender loving
Hmm.
African man.
Okay.
And he was talking about uniting Black people because, I think the misperception about um, our gay LGBTQ plus blacks is that what is their role in the black family and dun, 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 adoption. Um, get our
I
kids out
agree.
of the foster care system with people who don't give a crap about them. Um, and so he was actually an adoption specialist. Um, he did not, he identifies as same gender loving. And Minister Farrakhan actually made an alliance with them. Um, not only because of his connections to adoption agencies and how to handle a lot of Black children, but also because um, I think he realizes that, James Baldwin, he's a leftist as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
he was instrumental. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Um, he was also instrumental in the civil rights movement, and he's a prolific writer. And so how can you tell someone who's LGBTQ plus that the way they love someone excludes them from a movement for the liberation of our people? I completely agree that the religious context of the anti-homosexual sentiment in the Nation of Islam can be jarring, but they have made alliances with Black gay groups as well. So I want to acknowledge that
Right.
um, because I think sometimes we could get caught up in that. And then, yes, the I feel like I watched the first and the second Million Man March speeches.
Hmm.
Um, the first one I felt had more variety.
Hmm.
Um, and so with that variety, um, everyone had a different type of message, and it was a big, beautiful gumbo of Black people expressing their views on our situation. It was, I think, it was a lot of things going on at 1995 at that time. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so um, and then 2015 one, I don't believe there was as much variety. I don't believe uh, the nation reached out to as many people, and the numbers weren't there, right? I think they had half the
Right.
number the first one. Um, and so that made a huge difference. However, I would say there were more of them that came out than like Trump inauguration support. I'm not even. I don't even care like for politics like that, but I'm saying comparing the numbers, um,
Right.
as although it wasn't as much, they still came out. Um,
Right.
and for me, right, the second time around, I didn't get that same feeling that I got from the first one. Um,
No.
yeah,
Um, I think more or less, as I said, it was more of a glorified
Bible
sermon.
study.
Right. Like
Right,
it
right,
felt
right,
like it was a bunch of churches coming together, you know.
right,
Um, Thinking back onto it, it's kind of like what did we stand for? You
right,
know, I do remember, a lot of it was in response to, the high police brutality back
absolutely,
then, and
absolutely,
it's still escalating to this
of
day.
course,
And it was like his biggest message was or else. To
right.
this day, I don't know what or else means and what he meant for that.
You know, as a leftist, what or else means,
Right.
right,
Well, and see, even with that, even as a black communist, when I say or else, it's still about me honing my political education.
right,
A lot of the or else I feel is reactionary. Are you going to, are you really ready to put yourself on the line to do that?
right,
And I think that's another thing that's damning is that people think that we're all supposed to be warriors in that
right,
aspect. And to be real, not everybody is built for that.
right,
Not everyone is built for what they what they are trying to do. That's why I follow communism the way that I do, to each according to their ability.
right.
We all have something that we can contribute.
I would
I'll
say,
just
NOY is okay. They are black capitalists for sure. But I would also say, from what I've read in Message to a Black Man, they have some left leaning ideas about community support.
they're they're I'm just going to say it. They're pretty ultra conservative. Actually, they're very ultra conservative. A lot of them are are mainly on either the nuclear family
Right,
and how to make a capital, to make a nation. Yes, extremely conservative. Extremely conservative.
can I say why I feel like they're left leaning?
Okay.
Okay. Um, from what I understand, if you're within the Nation of Islam, they try to financially support every single member. I mean, I guess that's within every group, but I wouldn't say that most conservatives believe in supporting financially their group. Um,
Ah,
I don't know. I don't
I,
know.
I wouldn't say that because
I
even
don't. Mm-hmm,
even far right groups like the Klan
mm-hmm.
are willing to help their own members.
Okay.
Even them are willing to help support and help finance
Right.
to help them. Just like if you want to go by that logic,
Right.
then every time a police officer is on trial and they are on trial for murder, for
Right.
people to raise up money, could that be considered left leaning? No, no. So, so no.
You know what,
I,
Tina? You know what, Tina? Thank you for contributing to the conversation. Okay, so
I
let's.
disagree, but
I,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. You know, that's one thing. One thing that the NOI does well is
Mhm.
that they do bridge the gap.
Right,
One thing that Farrakhan knows how to do, he knows how to talk to people. He knows how to talk to people.
right, right,
He knows how to, you know, bridge people's thoughts.
right. Absolutely.
But when you get to the bare bones of the rhetoric, it's no different than, let's say you're looking at Sean Hannity on Fox News,
Right.
you know, and we have to keep ourselves honest with that.
Okay. Can I not I don't. Okay. This
I,
is what I'm going to say about it, right? Okay.
uh-huh.
So, are you familiar with Kwame Ture?
Yes,
Stokely
I am.
Carmichael, right? He's very much a leftist. Um, thank you so much, Cena. I appreciate that. Um, if or I know it's not about me, but you're saying that about Farrakhan. Thank you for contributing. He is very charismatic and he can be very factual sometimes as well. Um, okay, so Kwame Ture. Um, who else? Are you familiar with Muammar Gaddafi? Are you
Muammar
familiar?
Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Gaddafi. Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So
He actually
Farrakhan is actually was friends with these people before they
yes,
passed.
yes.
These are some very left leaning anti capitalists um, with nationalistic sentimentalisms of communism. Uh,
Hmm.
so tell me what you think of that, because it's like for
So
him to be so ultra conservative and to be so close to these far left leaning people, anti USA. Yes, he is very much anti
that
imperialism, anti USA. That's very left leaning as well.
that there is what I was getting ready to say.
Okay.
Um, one thing about one thing about having conservative views,
Hmm.
even if you don't carry all of them, if you have the stance of being against the occupation, like being against what America does globally,
Right.
being against occupation in other foreign lands, a lot of people will actually, you know, understand and empathize with you. I tell you, I tell you what, that's true. That's true. There is a difference between socialism and anti-US.
Right.
That's very true. That's
Right.
very true. Um, see, see, Farrakhan is anti-US. He is anti-occupation. He is anti the US being this superpower as he is. And
Right.
that's what drew Gaddafi. That's what drew Kwame Ture. In
Right.
fact, Gaddafi was going to provide him weapons. Good question.
You know what, Al?
He's not. He's not against capitalism. He's not. He's
He
he's
talks
very
about the elite all the time. This is what I'm talking about. I'm like, y'all, we're gonna act like we never heard Farrakhan speak out against the oligarchy. No, no, Al, no, no. Don't be through, Al. I love your contribution to this conversation. I'm saying we're not gonna act like we haven't seen him talk out against the elitist society more than any other religious figure. Like
yes,
he
but
calls them out. He calls them to the mat. That's very much anti-capitalism. If you're
to a
anti, mhm,
degree. to a degree, but he never says that it's wrong. He's he it's wrong.
Right.
He says that in fact it'd be better if there was more like us in that elite echelon.
Does he say that?
Yeah, yeah. Not in that degree.
Yes, he lives in Hyde Park. We know.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, this is how I see it. Okay,
Okay.
so there was a moment in which Vlad TV, said some disparaging things about Farrakhan, put 20 on 10. And
Mhm.
okay, I agree. America understand right at the moment they needed the Asian community. Imagine if they follow Russia. I
I'm
don't
not
know what you
sure
mean
what
by
that
that, Kata.
means.
Um,
And that's kind of like anti-Asian
I don't.
and yeah, like that's another topic. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that comment in a little bit. Okay, so okay, so heard him speak out against it, um,
Mhm.
and talk about making our own table rather than having a seat at their table,
Right.
um, which I guess implies a sort of black bourgeois elitism in itself, much as what your criticism was of Booker T. Washington. Um, I guess so. However,
Mhm.
I'm like he's very much anti-imperialism. Um, he actually praises the leftist leaders for how
Mhm.
they support their people and how they have less poverty because of their social safety nets compared to the United States. I've heard him say these things. I've heard him condemn the United States for assassinating their role in the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi, their role in injustice in a lot of ways, in a lot of senses. I think when I think of conservatism, I'm thinking they are very much, you know, they are pro individual. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't feel like Farrakhan is completely an individualist. And then I also think of a concept of, um, you know, uh, poverty is your own individual responsibility. I don't think Farrakhan believes that. I do see the conservatism. I see it socially for sure. In
Mhm.
the nuclear family.
Mhm.
Um, and I also see it in a religious standpoint as far as um,
Respectability politics.
right.
Big.
Absolutely, I see it
Mhm.
with respectability politics. Um, do I think respectability politics is necessary at times? Okay, that could be a conversation. I don't want to even go there. Okay, so Cena says she believes in separatism just like the minister. Okay, sis. Um, which is very interesting. I do believe we're highly segregated without you know us deciding to be.
Mhm.
Um, and so
Yes.
in that segregation, I think we might as well work with each other. That's what I believe. Um, And then we have Chef Kata or Kita. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing it. Not at all. All I understand, my point is we are pointing out topics about Farrakhan. All I'm all about love. My concern is we keep creating division opposed to our commonality. And you know
I
what,
disagree
Kita?
with that. I
Chef Kita.
disagree with that. Reason why I disagree with that is because there must be a dialectic. There must be a point where we have to struggle with ideologies even within ourselves. If
Absolutely.
you're not willing to criticize or highlight something that may be wrong out in the forefront on the sake of unity or commonality, you are quick to fall. And
Right.
that's one big thing that I think is damning about that, is because we can all highlight everything that a lot of our leaders, a lot of the people in the black community do, but when it's time to say, hey, this is something that we have a problem with, a lot of times we're either gaslit, saying
Right.
that we don't have a problem, it's just you, or you're shunned.
Right.
You know, if there's a problem for one person, then it's a problem for everybody. If I cut off my big toe and try to walk, I'm going to be messed up.
Right.
So, so if one part of us in this community is messed up, then it cannot function with everyone else. We just cannot cut one part off and think that we'll just do fine. That's probably part of the reason why. Well, no, I'm not going to say that. We're not
Okay.
going. I'm not going to say that.
Okay. We'll save that. We'll save that. Um, we'll interact with some other comments. His contribution to the NOI canon is a set of study guides entitled "Self Improvement for Community Development." Right. And so, my main criticism about self improvement for community development is we pay taxes. White
Hmm.
people pay taxes and they expect representation. They expect, their cities to be clean. They expect some sort of budget that makes their community better and their environment beautified. But black people, we pay taxes, and it's well, you guys got to, clean up your own areas. You guys should be picking up the trash. You know, that's my main criticism of that, is that no, we're paying into a government that is supposed to provide services, and they don't service our communities like they would other communities. Um, and so, yeah, no, I don't think it's my role to pick up trash. I think it's the role of the city to budget my taxes and pay someone, which stimulates the economy, to pick up the trash. Because that's just how communities are. People leave trash around your town. I don't believe it's my role to do certain things. However, if I feel compelled, that's something I should be doing. If I feel so compelled, it shouldn't be on me to improve things. That's the role that the government claims they have in our society.
I and see that is the role of a capitalist government. You
Right.
know,
I
for
agree.
us to for us to do all of that and still be left with scraps
Right.
is unforgivable.
Right.
However, we are in because I am communist, I do believe each according to their ability. Someone is able to do that, they should do it, not because they're getting paid to do that, or they're getting assigned to do that. You know, do it because you feel like you want to have pride for
I agree
something.
with that.
You know,
I'm saying
however,
taking too much of my money not to be keeping it clean. That's what I'm saying.
and see, that's, where it goes instead, right?
Right.
Warfare, drugs,
Right.
those things.
Right.
And to bring it into full circle, one thing I do see what the NOI and Farrakhan has tried to do is to give a sense of self determination, self understanding to Black folk, albeit in a more idealistic and metaphysical sense. It's not like back then with the Black Panther Party,
Right.
where there were there were quote unquote programs, and not only community programs, there were community pooling together.
Right.
There was no membership. If you are a part of this community, you're going to get this help also.
Absolutely.
However, however, if it's an NOI, you've got to be subscribed to something to
Right.
get this help. And if you don't agree with it, you don't get it at all. That
Right.
wasn't that wasn't the role. That wasn't the way the Panthers worked with it. They didn't care that you didn't agree with them.
Right.
You were
Absolutely.
you were lumping. No matter, you're still going to get this help because you are a part of this. There
Absolutely.
was no gatekeeping with that.
Right.
And I think that's where my disconnect is with the NOI, is that there is a gatekeep a lot of times with them.
Definitely.
You
Definitely.
know, if you want to see this benefit, I'm gonna take you off the streets. Some people unfortunately aren't able to understand that. And when they even give the slightest of pushback, it's a blackball.
Right. Right. All right. So Sina says we should be like in like-minded tribes. This unity that we are asking for and stifling is at the same time never was our ancestors' lifestyle. I think we could have some autonomy within these groups and still have unity. I think we could have unity without uniformity.
There it
And
goes.
so, but with the prevailing like groups, I definitely think they're it's open for criticism. Just like I am open for criticism. You are. Everybody can get it. And
Yeah.
so I don't believe the Nation of Islam is infallible. That's why I had to make it clear I am not a part of the Nation of Islam. However, I do see their importance and I see their impact in the Black community. We are in times that might not be available. Oh, hi, Divine Key. How are you doing? She's a TikTok sister. We can live separately but come together for a common cause and the marketplace. I agree with that. You know, depending on what the marketplace is, as long as we're not exploiting each other, giving each other fair rates, I think that's great. We are being robbed. I do not recall what that is for. That was about 8 minutes ago. We pay taxes, then get paid poor wages to clean their neighborhoods. Absolutely. Right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's the exploitative, capitalistic part about that. Military and police, don't recall what that's about. That was about
That's
4 minutes
that's
ago.
probably where the taxes,
Right.
where it's going to, what we're
Right.
paying for.
Right.
So
Military.
that's where it came from.
And some might even go into those poor wages to clean their neighborhoods. Then we get the European Jews in Israel receive a large part of our taxes. I mean, foreign aid gets a
That's
lot of our taxes in general. Foreign aid is a
that's
huge,
you have to be careful because that's kind of bordering on the whole thing of anti-Semitism. You
right,
cannot you cannot, pinpoint it on one person or one ethnic group.
right.
You know,
Absolutely. We just talked about this, Al. It is a theological, the NOI is a theological dictatorship. And I even mentioned that I don't believe they have a council that they have to, that Farrakhan has to answer to. Um,
mhm.
I don't believe that that is in place. I respect the gatekeep. Thank you, Chef Kita. Okay, now we're all caught up with the comments. Let's move on to the next topic.
Okay.
Anti-Semitism.
Oh boy, this is about to
Okay.
be fun. This is
Um,
about to be fun.
right. Because I think that was the main issue I had. Okay, so with your video on TikTok, one of the main issues I had, I looked in the comment section. It was mostly non-melanated people putting their 2 cents in and calling Farrakhan anti-Semitic. And a lot of them were extreme leftists. When I looked at their videos or their content, I saw that they were extreme leftists. And I said, you need to start checking Stalin, some of these white dictators with actual power to enforce some of this stuff. Because a lot of communism is what is perceived to be anti-Semitic. I don't know if I saw some of them say they were Jewish and you know, make these criticisms, and I'm like, are you familiar with leftism? Because a lot of leftist countries are anti-Semitic. We're
Um,
careful not to be anti-Semitic, but since we can't see where each penny goes, it's safe to speculate that some pennies may make it into the in that inbox. Right, right.
see, but
I want to highlight also, if you look at the title, anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism.
okay,
Um,
here we go.
because I don't believe that any group of people are beyond reproach, and
Yeah.
so while I get um, the struggle of oppression within any group, um, and as a black woman, um, you know, I completely get the aspect of people misplacing a lot of blame in a lot of places, right? Um, and so where I have the issue is I think a lot of what people are describing as anti Semitism is not anti Semitism. I feel like it is anti Zionism. And we should be able to call out Zionism for what it is, European transplants in the Middle East. Because a lot of times they do not even, they have discriminated against Ethiopian Jewish people. Um, they have put restrictions that are racially based, and Ethiopian Jewish people in the state of Israel experience a type of racial stratification that Blacks in America face. Most leftists are highly anti Zionist. I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, Kwame Ture has criticized Zionism. I mean, the list goes on, right? And so I want to be careful because I feel like anti Semitism has more to do with how we treat those in that group within our borders, right? And
Right.
so obviously I'm against genocide. Um, and obviously I'm against discriminatory practices. However, I don't believe that is afforded back to my group's way, right?
See, the one thing that we have to understand when we say anti-Zionism versus anti-Semitism is that we have to look at the frame of Israel being what it is, which is an apartheid state.
Right.
They are occupying Palestine. They
Absolutely.
are they are slaughtering, absolutely slaughtering
Absolutely.
Palestinians, men, women, children, and all of the above. Um, there's there's not any type of way you can go around it and be incorrect in saying that Israel is a danger. However, when you say things like, "Oh, the European Jews are," are controlling America, or they're the ones that are the big brains behind everything. That's where it teeters into anti-Semitism. That's where it teeters into, well, not teeter, it just veers completely into.
Can I
And
be this is my criticism of calling black people anti-Semitic. We haven't received not a one damn reparation. Um and we built this country for free for over 400 years. We didn't get
okay,
reparations for that period of time. We didn't get reparations for Jim Crow. We didn't get for post Reconstruction. We didn't get it for the civil rights movement. We didn't get it for police brutality, mass incarceration, the crack era in which the CIA was involved in infiltrating our communities and spreading poison. We didn't get it for a whole lot of times. So for us to say these people who don't look like us, who belong to a group that we never personally discriminated against, that we never personally genocided against, gets a lot of benefits and privileges that we have yet to see as we have struggled longer and harder than anyone else. I don't think the anti Semitic criticism should be thrown our way so easily when we haven't seen the results of justice swing in our direction.
here's the thing about that. The one thing that we have to understand with when it comes to that, even though you have a point with us being actively treated as second class citizens, no matter where we go, anti-blackness is global. However,
Right.
we are putting it on the wrong title. I mean, on the wrong target. You know, excuse me. When you say, when you say that you that we have not had the privileges afforded, they haven't either, actually. Um, unfortunately,
I want to correct you because they do receive a stipend. Holocaust survivors receive a stipend, and rightfully so, because there were U.S. corporations involved during the Nazi era. So Bayer, Ford, several U.S. conglomerates were involved in eugenics in Europe during that time, during
but
fascism. So
but
I'm
here,
not mad at them for getting their money. I'm saying our perspective of we haven't gotten that money that they get. We don't have there was a Holocaust museum before there was a African American museum with the
okay,
Smithsonian's. There are several things that are out of place because we're a lot of black people are feeling like, well, what about us? Um, and I don't
so
feel like that's coming from a place of hating Jewish people. I think that comes from a place of what did they do to get it that I don't get it?
but see, that's the problem and why it's anti-Semitic, because we're comparing
We
our
have to
oppression.
compare.
Hold on,
We
hold
have
on,
to
hold on, hold
compare
on,
because they
hold on.
told us they can't afford to pay us reparations. Every
And see,
time we
that's
go, they say we can't afford it.
but how is it that ethnic group's fault?
It's not their fault. We're saying, how are they being
Okay,
prioritized over our needs? That
and
is what we're criticizing.
and
And
and unfortunately, whether it is, I'll say it like this. Yes, yes, you can say that that's unfair. yes, you can be anti-Zionist without being anti-Semitic, and I'm getting ready to try and explain it the best to my ability. Um, the issue is because of those things being active and that it's actively happened to us. We can fight for reparations. We must fight for reparations, but because there is no quote unquote political front for us, we don't have a political front, and a lot of people have a perspective on reparations that's just a check, that's just a stipend, when it's more than that. It's more of, we've got to have land, we've got to have a place where we can live, we have to have a place that we can rebuild for ourselves. So it's like unfortunately for that argument of they get all of this and we get
Right.
nothing.
Right.
um,
That's a fair criticism.
Unfortunately,
That's a fair
but
criticism.
they're still subjects to hate crimes.
Not, you see,
They're still
but
they're
is that black
still
people's
being
fault?
treated as
Is
they're
that black
still
people's
being.
fault?
Let me
See, you
finish,
get what
please.
I'm saying? The blame
I
game
get what
goes
you're
both
saying, but
ways.
but
Who
but
is
wait,
doing
wait,
that
wait.
to them? Who is committing those hate crimes?
Exactly. So
They,
why are we saying that? Why do they get this and we don't?
right.
Why are we being mad at the beneficiaries instead of the ones that are igniting this, the ones that
Because
are the.
Big Brother owes me and he owes me more. And Big Brother says he can't pay me, but he can pay somebody else. There's a problem with that. And I was
But
like, I'm
that's
not gonna budge on that. I'm like, I don't gotta hate them for that. But at the same time, you're gonna come and you're gonna get this criticism just like everyone else. Foreign aid in general, it's costing us billions. But how does that affect for our community on a small scale in our own microcosm?
you know
Macrocosmically,
how
I,
it
I,
affect,
I know how it affects
you
us.
know
I know
how
how it affects
it
us
affects us.
globally. Right.
Because you want to know how it affects us is because those settlers in Palestine, not just be mad at racists, not just be mad at racists. Those settlers are the ones that are teaching our police to brutally handle us. Those
Mm.
settlers are the ones that are trying teach teach our American quote unquote police to handle dissidents the way that they do Palestinians. So when you hear about, why did they get these instead of us, it's kind of like we're not telling the complete story. Why? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So okay, when we look at it from that standpoint, right?
Hmm.
If I feel like another analogy, and it's going to be a weak one, but I'm going to try to roll with it. Let's
Okay.
say I feel like the father of my child
Okay.
married a new woman, right?
Okay.
And he has decided to skip some child support payments to pay for an engagement ring.
Hmm.
Um, should I not be mad that this new lady's getting an engagement ring and I guess the child goes without necessities because of this extracurricular activity when he actually has a responsibility that is owed?
You should be, but at the same time, that quote unquote father, your child's father,
Yeah, but then if the woman
Hold on,
knows
hold on,
what's
hold on,
going
hold on, hold
on,
on, hold
she
on,
could
hold on,
say,
hold on.
"No, sweetie, don't get me an engagement ring. Give it to them. Give
But
it to
see
that
that
baby."
you just made it clear. The quote unquote, people that are beneficiaries of this of these things are the woman and the quote unquote elite to stir up discord the way that it is are the ones that are giving that away. So why be mad at the woman? Why be mad at the
Because
woman?
if the woman knows the situation, she should forego that ring and say, "No, take care of your responsibilities. We'll get something cheaper."
But see, that's not how it works, though.
Oh, but I know that's not how it works. But
That's not how it
it
works.
looks like the onus is on black people to be moral while everybody screws us over. That's where I'm feeling this conversation is going. The onus is always on the oppressed people to be the bigger person and still not get shit out of what we got going on. That's what I'm feeling like. I'm feeling like there's excuses being made, and so when we talk about accountability, I'm going to say yes, United States government, yes, you definitely play a role in this and you need to pay what you owe. But I'm also going to say, "Hey, why are you taking this money and you guys are oppressing other people in the process of that?" I'm going to say to
Those,
every group involved, "Hey, you are culpable for this, you are culpable for that, you are culpable for
that's
this, you are culpable for that." I'm
that
not
doesn't
gonna.
work.
Yeah, but
That
that's
doesn't
how it
it does
is.
it doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, the it, it's you're looking at it from an individualist. You know,
I don't think
you
it's
have
individualist because I'm talking
it.
from a group. I'm talking about group dynamics in which how did you guys, and they deserve all the money they get, right? And I
Mhm.
believe Native Americans also deserve all the money that they get. One is way far further back than our grievances. Another is way more recent than our grievances. Everyone is getting the proper attention, and I wouldn't even say Native Americans are getting the proper attention because I
I
feel
was gonna say
like
because
they
there's
get something.
currently
They get something.
that's
They get
literally
something.
there. That's not something that should be. Unfortunately, that falls flat on your face because they are still they are still finding their own children that are going missing.
I agree.
They are the ones that are given hate crimes the most. They are
By who?
police brutality, white
Right.
supremacy.
Right. Right.
So again, why is the onus on? Why is
Because
it the
the onus
onus
is on
that
us not to complain about these groups.
that's not
The
true?
onus is
That's
on
not.
us to say, "Oh, only the United States government." No, these groups also use us in their discussions about discrimination. They also use us in their discussions about why they should get certain rights. But they don't say is, and black people should get reparations for that. That's what I am complaining about. I'm complaining about people who will use us and our causes and our model for our movements, but will never say, and the United States government owes them too.
I I agree that that a lot of our blackness is consumed by no matter who it is. Unfortunately, unfortunately, that does not change the fact that it is a systemic commodification. Everything is a commodity. Everything is a commodity. So why are we going to focus on the symptoms instead of the base problem that's creating the discord.
I don't think it's just focusing on symptoms. I also believe that if there was a big campaign amongst all groups that claim to be people of color, non-white,
Mhm.
were to also campaign on our behalf for reparations, that we would get it. I think if there was enough members, we would get it. And I'm not begging anybody for a thing, but what I am saying is, I'm tired of being the bigger person. And if you are for justice, like you say you are, then you should be
Mhm.
also for restorative justice.
I
And if
am
you're
in, I am for
no,
restorative
no, no, not
justice.
you. I'm saying
Oh,
those
oh, oh.
other non-white groups who are
Mhm.
benefiting from our United States government in some degree. That if you are actually for unity, you would join a campaign for reparations for Africans who are descendants of the exploitative nature of the United States capitalistic system.
As idealist as that sounds,
But it's only
concretely,
POC unity when they want to use us.
okay, concretely, POC unity isn't real.
Of course.
Okay, so concretely, we would we understand that that will not happen. Idealistically, that would be nice if everybody could create a petition and petition for Black people to have reparations. That would be nice, but it doesn't work like that. That's why we have to, you know, have to have a political standpoint, a political facing up against that. And the one thing and the reason why I stand by communism is because it's more about not just a not just the economic system.
Right.
It is about making sure everyone is taken care of. And
Absolutely.
and the one thing is we won't be free until the US is completely
Dismantle.
destroyed.
Absolutely.
Destroyed. Destroyed.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like again, it brings it to, you know, ideally they shouldn't accept that money. Ideally, your child's father shouldn't accept that from shouldn't give that to that person and they accept it. However, I say it like this also. A lot of the US government straight up has an abusive are straight up abusive to a
Right.
lot of these systems. And they're given that as a concession. Thanks for putting up for with my abuse. Here's this.
Right.
So my question is, are you willing to let that abuse happen just to have a concession that way? I
I don't
wouldn't.
think it's about just having a concession. There's it's proof. There's generational wealth that has been robbed um, from us. And
Hmm.
so with the concept of generational wealth, right? Um, the people who have been here the longest should have more to show for it.
Hmm.
United States. And that is not the case because there was a huge period of time where there was no pay. And then when there was pay, if you were too successful, there were lynchings, burnings, bombings, by jealous middle class white people. Um, and so, yes.
So I think you're approaching the point. that I'm getting ready to say.
Do I want to accept money for the suffering? Um, I want what is owed.
Yes, I
Yes,
agree with I agree with that. And the one thing about that is that they're not accepting it without a fight. We can't they're not going to understand, oh, we've got to rally around this.
right.
We've got to let them rally around them. And we have to be idealistically, you know, fighting for them with the ways that they have taught us. It doesn't work like that. In order in order to actually drastically change this for our conditions, which neither you or I will be the beneficiary of,
Of course
it'll
not.
be it will be beyond us.
Generations.
It's
Right.
going to have to be it's
Dismantled.
going to have to be, dismantled brick by brick.
Absolutely.
And and I feel like that a lot of it, they're gonna have to it's just gonna have to burn down. It's just
Right.
going to have to be burned down, and there's nothing that we can do about
I
it.
appreciate that you're not a reformist.
No, no, no. I
Right.
don't believe in reform. Reform is the reason why a lot of these things that we are going through right now is is happening to us. When you
Absolutely.
hear when you hear reform, they want to keep the system within. They just want it to make it easier for everyone else.
Right.
Um, I'm here, but for me, I feel like that you have to destroy all of that. And if
Absolutely.
the person isn't comfortable with that, then they have to go too. They
Hey,
have to go too.
absolutely.
And it's kind of like, again, that's why I cannot place fault on these oppressed groups that are accepting these things, because
Okay.
you know what, they've been abused just like we have been
And so
abused.
when the system falls, and they try to preserve their place in it, what is the recourse of that action if they try to maintain the system that they slightly benefit from?
Unfortunately unfortunately it's only going to be a few
Right.
that's going to be the ones that benefit from that, and those chosen few are going to be taken down.
Okay.
Again, the whole eat the rich type of rhetoric,
Right.
you know it's beyond. The one thing we cannot do, however, when we say that, is highlight, you know we're eating the rich because they are, quote unquote, this color or this oppressed group.
Of course not. Of course
I'm not
not.
salivating to go after another black person just because they're rich.
Absolutely not.
We have to look at it from an unbiased perspective. And let's also be honest with that, is that when we look at the two different systems, um, not everybody has to, quote unquote, die. What
Absolutely.
they have to do is class suicide, and that is to give up their status, to give up their beneficiaries, to give up their privilege in order to live um to live on. You have to give that up. That was that was the point of the gulag, the worker camps.
Right.
You know, you were being re-educated. You were sent there. You were to work. You were being educated. You got to go home during the weekend.
Right.
You know, it wasn't treated as a prison. You were treated as a place to be educated on why this is different, why we are changing to this system.
Right.
And that's the same thing that, we have to even do now. I'm not salivating to go after Rihanna just because she's a billionaire.
Right.
But but goddamn it, I'm gonna beat Elon Musk with a brick to the head if I ever catch him slipping.
Right. Right. Right.
You know, so it's about you have to look at the nuance to it. And
Absolutely.
why I don't see your average Holocaust survivor as someone that I need to take the blame with compared to compared to the former Nazis that
Right.
are that are relocated in different countries and getting cozy jobs
Right.
just
Right.
because they were just because of certain operations.
Well, here
You
too.
know,
Here too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So it's kind of like you know why must we put the onus on that? Now, to bring it to the understanding of Farrakhan, do I think that he is an anti-Semite? Yes, I do. Do I think that he is? Do I think that he is the only one that deserves to be criticized? No, I don't. Do I think that he is unfairly criticized on his stances? No, I do not. Do I think that he's given too much focus because of that? Yes, I do. I think that he is given too much focus and
Where do
too
you
much.
feel he is anti-Semitic?
He outrights a lot of times with
He's
his
talking
rhetoric,
about elite Jewish people
but
who
see,
are
but see,
oppressive to other people, including other Jewish people. When he calls them devilish Zionists, he's specifying which ones he's speaking of.
anybody can be a Zionist.
Right.
anybody, anybody can be a Zionist. Why do you need to add Jewish to that?
Because a lot of them are Jewish. Um, I'll say
But see,
this, right?
that's huh.
I don't believe I don't think it's all right to be discriminated against for any of your religious beliefs. However,
Right,
um,
right.
you know, if he would have said satanic Christian people, it wouldn't have that same sting, right?
But
Um,
see, that's there. There it is. You just answered it. You just answered it. In his way to be inflammatory, he punches it. He punches on them in order to do that. Those elites don't care. But guess who's being affected? The average Jewish person that doesn't even know who.
but black
Again,
people aren't the ones attacking Jewish people.
you're
and
right.
and white
You're
people
right.
don't care much for Farrakhan. So
You're right. And that's where I'm getting ready to say that. You're right. Black people do not do that often. Black people do not go out their way to say, "Oh, I hate this person, so I'm going to attack him."
right,
But guess what? He is used as a scapegoat. He is used as a scapegoat. Well, I can agree with that. Does it make you what he says right? Hell no. Hell no. If he doesn't want to be used as a scapegoat, he needs to understand that he doesn't need to say that type of thing.
the Anti Defamation League, I feel like has um a lot of power and control, and
Hmm.
so a lot of times I feel like you know a lot. let me say it like this. I've
Okay.
looked up certain executives in the music industry who allow the word nigga to be marketed, mass marketed, who allow
Okay.
negative images of black women um, be marketed, who allow a lot of the like negative aspects. And I'm not talking about respectability politics. I'm talking about just general decency, right? Um, Dehumanizing black people.
Hmm.
And we can look up some of these people. These are the same people who would have a problem if we demonize them in that manner for their group. And some
But
of them
see
are
here,
Jewish. And that's not a lie. That's not a fabrication. That's not me saying I'm jealous because they're in a position of power. It is me making
I
an observation. It
I
is
don't think
there's
any of
anti-blackness
them.
in the Jewish community. And
Yes,
they
there
don't
is.
get called out on it. They don't get called
Yes,
out
there
on
is.
it.
Yes, there is. There
Right.
is. But here's the
Right.
thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. What does their ethnicity have to do with the fact that we as black people are commodities?
What does, because some of them are involved as middlemen in the process of the commodification of black culture.
So you take that away. You take that middleman away. Is that commodity still there?
If you take that middleman away, I'm not sure if it, I'm not sure if it, let me say it like this. Um, Motown was ran by black people, and you
Okay.
don't see near as much negative stereotypes of black people. Actually, you saw the opposite,
Okay.
and they commodified black culture. But it's not um, as it doesn't sting as bad as when somebody else is doing it to you and using your own stereotypes and tropes against you. That's a whole nother ball game.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. That then changes to no matter who is the person doing that, no matter who is the color of the person doing that, as long as it's selling and it's marketable.
No, I'm saying when we were in control of our own music, our own culture, then at during those times, you saw more balance. I'm a proponent of freedom of speech. So yeah, you can say and do what you want to do, but I also believe that there should be equal marketing for positive hip hop, for things that are going to be, great. I'm posting your comments. Um that for
So
me, right? I'm about balance and I'm about us benefiting from our own talent, our own culture. That's what I'm about.
but see, here's the thing. You say that you want that, but guess what? We have three black billionaires all in hip hop, and they are beneficiary of our commodities. We always talk about
They
how,
made their money from corporations. Corporations
but
gave them their money. I didn't make
but
Jay-Z a
the,
billionaire by buying two albums. He became a billionaire that made his living off of selling a company that he said was going to be black owned.
guess what?
Same thing with
That's a
Dr.
good
Dre. Dr. Dre got his $1 billion when Beats by Dre was sold by Apple. He didn't get that money from me.
again, again. How is that any different for us to say that you know they got their money from corporations, but
Right.
guess what? But guess what? they still use the commodity. They still use the they still are using the commodity to exploit us. I mean, Jay-Z is a big exploiter.
I
Someone
agree.
like
I'm not okay with black capitalism just as well. I'm not saying that. I'm saying um being exploited by another black person isn't much better. And Diddy is a perfect example of that.
okay, okay, I was
So
getting there.
right, right. Um and so I completely agree with that aspect. At the same time, I think my main complaint is that other cultures don't mind us commodifying foolishness in the black community. But if we did the same thing to them, then we would be considered anti Semitic. That's what I have a problem with.
Well, the thing is when you hyper focus on it just being us, there's a problem with that because you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Hella there's hella anti-Semitic tropes in media that you see,
Such
and you
as,
such as well the stereotype that um, Jewish people are very good with money, the stereotype that they are money hoarding and greedy. That is still a trope that runs free range within all within all forms of media,
is
and it's
that really the hill we want to die on? Oh, you guys are really good at money. You guys are like, compared to, you're not human. You don't deserve to live if you interact
but
with the police and they kill you. Like, I
but
just
see
need
that's
the
the
oppression
that's
Olympics
where
to
the
end.
but see that's where the but see that's where it changed to they're stripping them of humanity because they're saying that they're the ones that are greedy, they deserve to die. They're the ones that are greedy, they're taking it from them, they deserve to die. And that's a hill that a lot of these anti
What black person is talking about the extermination? Because those are all white supremacist groups who are doing that.
but see this is what I'm saying though. This is what
Like,
I'm
I
saying
don't
though.
see the role black people play in that.
They
Like,
don't
so when I
have
see the Anti Defamation League trying to come down hard on Farrakhan, and he doesn't influence not a one white supremacist group that's affecting them, I'm like, oh, you guys are being petty, and you guys are trying to clamp down on a group because you don't want to face your oppressors.
again, Farrakhan is just a scapegoat.
That's what I'm saying. That is what I
But
am saying. Yes.
but but again, Farrakhan is a scapegoat. But why should he have free reigns to say those things anyway? Just because someone else does
No, I think like I said, I'm a proponent of freedom of speech, so anybody can get it.
it? And I
Um
and I believe in freedom of consequences for your freedom of speech. Just because you
he
are able
suffered a
to
lot of
say,
consequences of that.
but see, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, just because you have freedom of speech, does that mean someone doesn't isn't able to react to that?
Yeah. And so I'm failing to see, okay, this is what I think I'm failing to see.
Okay.
Because like I said, number one, like the amount of interactions between black and Jewish people outside of New York City is like, come on, it's minimal um,
That's
compared to our interactions with other groups of people.
okay.
So when they say when you're trying to clamp down on freedom of speech,
Okay.
because we're pointing out that, hey, there's a middleman who's asking us to be the bigger person while they're not being the bigger person. You get what I'm
Then
do you get where I'm coming from on that?
I get where you're coming from, and the reason why I'm asking is you take away the middleman, and that exploitation is still there.
There's still culpability for a middleman.
There's still culpability for a middleman, but at the same time, that middleman is not some Joe Blow on the street.
Of course not.
And one thing
And
that we have to
I'm not
understand,
even pointing out the Joe Blow on the street. I'm
but
saying there's
but
elitists who happen to be of a certain group
but what
that
makes you think Farrakhan isn't an elitist? Because
what makes
he,
me think that Farrakhan is not an elitist?
yeah,
Because he speaks out against elitism, and also I also feel as though Farrakhan speaks about certain issues in the Black community in a way that is bridging the gap between all of us.
I disagree. And the reason why I disagree with that and
Mm-hmm.
say that he is himself an elitist
Mm-hmm.
is that Farrakhan still does not have the lived experience of the average working class black person. Farrakhan is still someone that has a position of power over
Absolutely.
other
Is
black.
every person in a position of power an elitist? I mean, what is his power over just the Nation of Islam? He has influence and some impact in the Black community, but Chicago's still violent, and that's where he's headquartered.
Exactly. So,
So,
but at the same time, it's like he has had a part in both it being, and I apologize, I'm just picking something up. It's been
no
annoying me.
problem, Zion. You good? I got a
Okay,
baby on
so
my shoulder.
no, it's kind of like he sees that Chicago is still violent and that he is he is out and about in there. He's not even in he's not even in like the heart of it. He's in a good suburb
Right,
of Chicago.
right,
And
right.
he's benefiting off of that. He's benefiting off of living good in those areas. But again, there's
Which
still
communist dictator lives amongst the people? Which
which
communist
time
leader lives amongst the people?
well, I'll tell you,
Okay.
there's no quote unquote dictators out there,
All right.
but actually Castro
Okay, I'll give
lived
you.
and worked lived and worked amongst the people.
He was
Um,
paranoid. He had lots of security. So,
I mean, at the same time, the CIA tried to assassinate him 600 times.
oh, I agree. Yeah, right.
Thomas Sankara, have you heard of him?
Yes, I've heard of Thomas Sankara. He's a black feminist. Actually, I respect him a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm. He was a black Marxist that
that's what.
actually gave up his presidential salary
Right.
and actually sent that to rebuild Burkina Faso.
He was murdered.
Yes,
Yes.
he was.
Right. Right.
I'll give you one more. I'll give you one more. Okay.
Well, okay. Can we say Putin is not
Putin
amongst the
is
people?
a fascist.
He. Okay. We'll give you.
Putin is a fascist.
Okay.
Putin is a ultra conservative
He is
an
ultra.
ultra yes, he is
Yeah.
an ultra conservative politician. When you talk about the end of the USSR,
Right.
he had a part in the reforms that actually, created the capitalist hellhole that was Russia.
Right.
He had a part in that.
Right.
So no, Putin is not one of those. And I think that's
President of China.
Xi Jinping. Okay. Now Xi Jinping is a different case.
Okay.
He actually is a person of the people that actually still, continues on with the China with Marxism with Chinese characteristics.
Right.
So with him, I know it's just easy to talk about how he's some kind of dictator, which is far from the truth.
Okay.
But a lot of his works have been trying to reinvest and make sure that China gets across their 20-year goal. China has goals all the way around. In fact,
Right.
they are progressing further to make sure that the climate change doesn't kill us. And we need to stop being so disrespectful of that because they're going to be the ones that actually help and actually help and save most of us. But
Well, I'm just trying to highlight like which leaders actually live among their people. You for security reasons,
these
like
now here's the thing. We want to talk about there is no quote unquote communist dictator. That is just spoon fed into propaganda by
yeah,
the
definitely,
West.
definitely.
All right. However, if you want to talk about men of the people that actually help, look no further than Venezuela.
Absolutely.
Nicolas Maduro. He is a man of the people. The people love him. Before him, Comandante Hugo Chavez, may he rest in heaven.
Maybe
He
yeah.
was a man of the people that actually, you know, stayed and invested with them. Now, again, oh gosh, I lost track of what I was saying. I lost track of what I'm saying, but it's like they're they do have a position of power, but their positions of power are helping in giving material gains to their people.
Right.
What material gains have Farrakhan given us beyond beyond hip hop stars, beyond the Breakfast Club, beyond
Okay. So what I would like to say is um morale boosters are very important, especially within communism. A feeling of nationalism encourages the people to be more proficient as workers, and it also empowers them to have a greater hope for their nation,
okay,
um, which is a pillar of leftism is
okay.
having nationalistic pride. So I
We
would
have to.
say,
I'm going to give a little bit of nuance to that.
okay,
When you talk about the nationalism, you're talking about for oppressed people.
For oppressed people,
mainly.
absolutely. That's why I said to become efficient, proficient workers, and
Uh-huh.
to have greater hope for their nation. Um, and so when we look at the Nation of Islam, their policy is that melanated people of the United States are should be considered a nation within the nation, and that's what I think he provides is a morale booster. And he also has networking, right? So he's networked with a lot of leftist figures, and you'd be surprised in how much he's actually changed the perception of a lot of countries, you know, about the Black experience, for one, and then
Uh-huh.
also how he's changed Black people's perspective on other systems of politics and economics. Um,
Okay.
I remember when he was publicly decrying the assassination of Gaddafi, several Black people became enlightened and aware of Gaddafi, his role in the African Union, and how he was trying to unite Arab and African peoples, um,
Mhm.
in order to combat not only systemic racism, but to create their own economy, to be less dependent on colonization. So, um, and I'm not sure if you read the Green Book. That's one
I
of
actually own it.
okay, and
I
and
actually own it. So
and so I would like to think it introduced some people to the Green Book and enlightened them and as to other systems perspective on capitalism, and that's something he brings to the table, in my opinion, um, is enlightening people through his networking and morale boosting. Yes, absolutely, absolutely, Anais. Um, so, what do you feel in me saying that? Because he deals with the people that you admire,
yes,
right?
yes. And the thing about that is, and what I was going to say is that he deals with them. But the thing about compared to them and Farrakhan is that Farrakhan looks at it through an idealistic, metaphysical way.
Okay,
Gaddafi, Toure, Castro, he's rubbed elbows with them,
right,
but but they have all had grounded material gain with what they're
right.
doing.
But he's not the
And
leader of a nation either,
oh, I know that. Oh no, no, he's not.
right?
He's not. He's not. And that's another thing that we have to, you know, put in perspective is that yes, he's only one person. He's only one person.
Right,
Mr. Farrakhan is only one person. However, for him to have the hold of yeah, I do not I curse Obama every day for taking Gaddafi away from us. Um
absolutely. Only he could have got away with that one.
yeah.
Right,
But Farrakhan is one person
right,
and yet he's lionized and treated as some kind of king, and he is treated as some kind of beacon of hope. He's treated as a savior to me,
right.
and it's kind of like he's embraced that to a degree.
Right.
He's very much embraced that, and that's the difference between those I admire compared to him, because none of the ones that I look up to still there with us,
Right.
still there with us, is going in and
I'm
out.
here. I'm here.
Okay,
We're mhm.
yeah, the ones that I look up to only saw themselves as beyond, as someone a part of something greater than them. Farrakhan does not think of that way. Farrakhan has embraced that people see him as the one great man that can change everything.
Do you really feel that way?
I do, to a degree, yes. And I
Okay.
say that because he has said he has said many times before that God has made him to be
Okay.
this great man to save everyone else. That is out from his words, not mine.
Right.
So it's kind of like it's hard to say that it's hard to say, oh, you believe this way, and the man says it himself.
This is okay. This is what I have to say. Like when you're amongst your own people.
Uh huh.
Thank you very much, Al. Um, right. So let's say this: when you're amongst your own family, um, and you get in a mode of celebrating with each other, and you're you're essentially saying he's a narcissist. Ah!
He is. He is.
Ah!
He is.
No,
Look
I
at
can't
him
have
up.
you saying that on here.
He is.
Oh man. Okay. Look, look, look. He's calling him a megalomaniac. A narcissist is a psychological diagnosis. I am not personally in a profession that can diagnose that, but he is saying he is a megalomaniac, right?
Yes.
Um, and so and he suffers delusions of grandeur. But I okay, do we think he really thinks that, or do
He's
or
he said it
no?
on
Do
record.
we think? I say a lot of things. I say a lot of things. I brag on myself sometimes too. Like, and if I'm around a group of people that I love, I'm gonna just put a little extra sauce on it because that's who.
But he said it to. But here's the thing. He said it to those same white people. He said it to like Phil Donahue that he believes that he has been brought upon God to help us get
Which
free.
preacher does not say that? Tell me which preacher.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You just answered it. You just answered. You just answered. Because he is a preacher, and because he is working on the lens of being, because he's working on the lens of actually, preaching in a metaphysical state,
Right.
that you cannot gain anything concrete from it.
But isn't that the whole morale thing? Is like it's not concrete, but it's there to motivate you.
It's there to motivate you, yes. But when people start looking at him as a leader, instead of a quote unquote, cheerleader or someone that boosts
I,
you up.
he is a leader of sorts. Like I said, his networking alone, all of them say it. They all worship the same God, which is a male chauvinist. Cena, we agree. We agree, sis. Okay. Um, what I'm saying is, because I'm like, we're not saying he's a narcissist. I want to make that one clear.
No.
Megalomaniac is the term that we've settled on, not narcissist. And then also, yes. Okay, so are you aware that in the Muslim community, like religion and politics go hand in hand? It's like a theocracy.
Yes.
Okay. And so you know that essentially the base of the Nation of Islam is Islam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So being that they're heavily influenced by Islamic Republic,
Hmm.
um, I would say it's not far fetched for someone of the Islamic persuasion to say that they feel like their political policies, networking, their way of life is ordained by Allah. I don't think it's far fetched um, for someone who's heavily influenced by Islam to make those type of metaphysic claims even within their own governments, because a lot of them have theocracies.
But what about Islamic socialists? What
There
about
are
Muslim?
Islamic socialists who use Quran passages in their speeches.
Yeah, liberation theology.
Right,
That's what it is. That's what it
right,
is.
right.
And unfortunately, Farrakhan does not have any sort of liberation theology to go with his.
He does. That's what I'm saying. The entire Nation of Islam has
Mhm.
liberation theology like in their background. Um, you know what? I will give you this, right? I
Mhm.
think Malcolm was more of a liberationist, and when he left, they were more compliant. You
Mhm.
and I think one of the ancestors I talked to, who was actually close with Kwame Ture, um,
Mhm.
he said that they felt like they put a muzzle on Malcolm for his anti-police, anti-government sentiments,
Mhm.
because they wanted power and influence with the police and not to dismantle them necessarily.
There it
That's
goes.
so, but even with that, if your status as a 501c3, you cannot be anti-government. That's one of the
Exactly.
rules. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So with that said, what is what is the liberation that Farrakhan is preaching if he has to adhere to the 501c3 rules?
Okay. But there's several organizations. Okay. Look. Right. But we
so
also, it's a fine line you have to ride, right? You want that tax exempt status,
mhm.
but
but
at the
but
same
see but see let's take it further. Let's take it further. I'm using with everything that you just said. If he is this quote unquote Bane, and he is against the elites. Why would the elites give him a tax exempt certificate to say what he wants to say if he's not in compliance with them?
Okay. And so it's chess, not checkers.
Are we sure about that?
um because if you look at it from this standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um if he knows when to hold him, he knows when to fold him. Um and he plays close to his vest. I feel like in some aspects, um, he disavowed Obama intentionally because he knew he took pictures with him and people were going to say this is a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when uh, Obama disavowed Jeremiah Wright for his anti-imperialistic statements,
Mm-hmm.
um, then then Farrakhan was like, Jeremiah Wright, I got your back. That's a type of chess that I don't
Are you
think white
sure
people
that's
intended.
are you sure that's are you sure that's chess and not just plain old opportunism?
See, look. I have listen. I deal with people who are NOI, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, what I want to judge the tree by is by its fruit, right? And I would say Nation of Islam definitely has an influence in most major cities of some sort
Mm-hmm.
with community outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at it from that standpoint, there is more to it than just being anti-government and outright, anti-establishment. I think, but he always says, like when 9/11 happened, Farrakhan was the only one talking that shit. Like this is because of your system, the evil that y'all do. Like I felt like he was the only one talking that about that and not mourning the death of people in an unfortunate incident, an
You know who
unfortunate
else?
event.
But you know who else talks that way
Who?
when given the opportunity, or the way
Who?
he used to talk that way?
Who?
Alex Jones.
Oh man.
Okay, so it's kind of you have to see it from you have to see it that the way that it falls upon. Now, you said something. You judge it by the fruit.
Right.
I judge by the root, and the root of it is that he is trying to gain an influence,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
the influence is to have a stake in this system. You just said it also. You just said it also
Right.
that they put a muzzle on Malcolm because they had connections with law enforcement, and
Right.
they were trying to not mess that up.
Right.
What makes you think Farrakhan isn't trying to mess that up? Why do you think he just goes after the individual? He
He doesn't
talks
go
of
after the individual.
hold on. Let me finish. Let me
Okay.
finish. He talks about the individual. He says that he says that a police officer can shoot you dead. Go to Wendy's, get him something to eat, and be home in time to kiss his wife. And then he says that until we start shooting back at these police, until we start shooting back at these individual officers that do that to us, then there isn't going to be any freedom for us. Why wouldn't he talk about how there are people that pay and that there are systems that give these police officers, extra benefits and extra finances for picking off us? Not a conspiracy theory. Not a conspiracy theory, but you know, there's there's a lot of people that support and funnel in.
Right.
You know, like why not talk about that? Why hyper focus on the individual action? You know, I agree. You you knock that motherfucker's head off
Right.
that kills you, but
Right.
you know what? You cut that snake at the head also, and that
Absolutely.
snake is the system that creates more of those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm saying why can't we multitask and do both? I you know, look. I'm not gonna like say anything too crazy, but I will say when I was in California,
Hmm.
they shot back.
Okay, I know, I
So,
know.
and the let's say somebody was running away from the police on foot. There were certain neighborhoods the police just didn't chase them into
Hmm.
because they knew better.
Right.
So I would say around the early 2000s, certain groups, oh, thank you. I apologize. Certain groups would retaliate in ways that put fear in the LAPD's heart, and there were a lot less incidents of police brutality because they didn't know what their affiliations were. So yeah, I think that works.
Unfortunately, the LAPD has became
A
one
gang in
of
it.
the, and there still are some of the biggest gangbangers. You
Oh,
know that they are now enforcing that if you are homeless, you
in LA.
are, yeah, if you are
Right.
homeless in LA, you are fined a certain amount of money that they know that they cannot pay, and instead they're being arrested.
Right.
That's gang shit.
That is. I agree.
That's gang shit. So
Right.
it's like, how is that? How is it that you want to be a leader that wants to boost morale, but your root, your root, is saying, you know, let's not talk about that because that can mess up our connections.
Okay. So, they are only concerned about their group.
Hmm.
And so if black people in mass became part of the Nation of Islam, like they were becoming when Brother Malcolm was expanding. Um,
Hmm.
and then the second expansion I think occurred between the late 70s and the 80s. Um, then that would work. But now their numbers are so stagnant. They've teamed up with the Scientologists. Um,
Hmm.
because both of their groups have become stagnant. So they're now relying on the teachings of Elrond. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Uh,
No, because I'm laughing internally because that's just like, and he's always said something against Scientologists, and now you're like working on it. Don't you think that's a little bit suspect?
oh man, I don't know. You know what? Because like
I
I have this is why I don't mind this conversation with just me and you. I had a
mhm,
problem. I didn't have the problem with you making that criticism of Minister Farrakhan. My criticism was
mhm.
there's too many white people in the comment section with something to say, and I was like,
Yeah,
this ain't your convo. That was my
yeah,
issue,
yeah,
and I
and
was
and
like, mm-hmm,
like I said, I gotta be better at saying, hey, if you white, don't try to put in your 2 cents. If you ain't black, don't interact.
right,
So I get that, but it's kind of like for us as black folk,
right,
we owe it to ourselves to say, uh, let's actually be honest about the people we are saying we are we are going to follow behind.
right.
And
But he
that's
has all the connections globally. He has the connections.
don't you think that's a little dangerous? Should we not be concerned about that?
There's a lot worse.
There's a lot worse, but
when
why are
when
we,
Rodman was our representative in North Korea, I had a problem with that.
why is that?
Because I prefer Rodman has never presented himself as a thinker or someone who is politically astute.
And yet he actually became a diplomatic a diplomat to the DPRK.
Right.
So that kind of proves it wrong, right?
Oh man.
So is it because he presents himself
No,
as
I love
flamboyant?
Robin. I think he's one of the best forwards the NBA had in a golden era of basketball. Like
Okay.
I love his style, his flair, his uniqueness, his fashion. I love the fact that he does gender benders like that. I don't have a problem with Rodman personally.
Hmm.
Um,
But is it because you wouldn't expect someone like him to actually go out his way to do something that you feel someone else should be
more
equipped?
qualified for.
Hmm.
I mean, you never know. Some of these leaders in different countries and ours are eccentric and just might draw to him, and they don't feel like when Jane Fonda went to Vietnam. I didn't feel like that was her place either.
I
Um,
think, and see, I think that's one thing that we have to not look at the hyper focus
right.
on who that person is. Because if you have no problem with Farrakhan being friends with Gaddafi, then you shouldn't have an issue with Rodman being friends with Kim Jong Un.
Okay. So Farrakhan presents himself as a thinker, and
Uh-huh.
theological leaders often are more politically astute.
And yet, when people talk about the, like political lining and how Rodman actually made it possible for the DPRK and US to have somewhat of a, you know, what's that word I'm looking for? Somewhat of an open line of communication. Don't you think that's beneficial? I think that
Um,
I I Cena, I don't want a following, to be honest. I am only one person,
Absolutely.
and I actually am about an idea. My ideas will live beyond me. So I want to contribute something that helps build up something else to where someone else can think and build upon it. But I don't want a following. I don't want to be a leader. I just want to give something to help other people.
Right. Um,
So,
and intellectually based discussions such as this, I feel like are a recorded record of a thought in a period of time. Just like when I look back at Malcolm X speeches, just
mhm,
like when I look back at Kwame Ture's speeches, I
mhm.
look at it as a period piece that has universal themes. And so
Absolutely.
hopefully this discussion will be part of that, because you don't really see Black people having a critical, nuanced conversation about a leader such as Minister Farrakhan,
They
because
do. We do. We do. We just don't. We are not. A lot of people are in denial of that,
right,
and I think when I have the mental set to do so, I think I'll go into it further. But I think I'll do it on fan base
okay,
instead, where I'll talk about you know the nuances of someone like Farrakhan
right,
compared to his contemporaries and those before him.
okay,
I think I'll do somewhat of a think towards that. I just have to formulate it. But when it comes to people making connections and people making like connections with other countries and leadership, I think it's pretty it's pretty dangerous not to consider that some of these people that we just look at as entertainment can we underestimate their ability. I'm gonna give you an example.
okay.
Have you heard of Paul Robeson?
Yes, I've heard of Paul Roberson, the actor. Yes,
Actor,
activist.
singer, football player.
Right.
He was the diplomat to the USSR.
Mm.
So what makes him different from Rodman? Some people see Rodman and say, "Hey, you should have just been someone that should have dribbled a ball." Guess what they said to Paul
I would
Robeson?
never say that.
But this is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
When people talk about how celebrities aren't supposed to be political or aren't supposed to have a political standpoint against the grain. When you have it against the grain, then that's when people are like, "Hey, you need to just stick to basketball, or you
Shut up,
need to
dribble.
stick to
Right.
saying yes." And that's what people told Paul Robeson: "Shut up, saying act. Don't be political because we don't want that from you."
Right.
So when we hear about Rodman and his connections to Kim Jong Un, I don't think it's a fair assessment to downplay what he what he has done.
Right.
So I do feel like that there is a benefit to what he's doing, just as much as people saw a net gain with Farrakhan's connection to Gaddafi.
Right.
So, But unfortunately, I have to cut this short. My phone is about dead. I gotta find
All
my
right. I was
charger.
getting ready to say that. Thank you so much for joining me today and discussing
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. This has been great. I think we should do it again.
Yeah.
Once once we got to set up a topic, and I think we'll move forward with that
Okay.
on that. But definitely, thank you again for having me on here. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor.
Thank you. And you guys have a wonderful night.
Thank you guys.